You are listening to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. I'm Chad Wilson. That's Amo Calamino. And we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. It is rivalry week. It's Turkey week. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there. We hope that your holidays are full of cheer and winners. Compliments of the Two Chumps, Chad Wilson and Amo Calamino. College football continues to be a problem for both of us. More so for me last week than my compadre right here, but have no fear. If I don't do well in the regular season, I clean it up at the end of the year in the bowl season. And so, I feel good going into things here, as good as you could feel off of yet another losing college football week. So I'm really running on the speed of my NFL.
Let's be honest. We've had an entire season at this point to start to sort of figure this new model out, as I like to say in college football, because I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to handicap college football compared to what they're used to from years ago. And I'm hoping that between the season of what we experienced and understanding the bowls, which we usually do well in our bowl selections, because there's a certain psychology you have to understand in bowl games. And they don't necessarily.
And that will run even deeper this year.
Even deeper.
Because, we've got 12-team playoff, as everyone knows, and there are bowl games that are going to fall out of that. And then you got to start wondering about who's actually trying to win, trying to play, who's going to have their team show up. You're going to have some of these bowl games where, 30, 40% of the team's not there, or at least the guys that they rely on are not there.
Yeah.
And so now you're going to be thinking about taking a team who's got a whole bunch of new faces in very important places. So the bowl season gets tricky.
And it's also, understanding what the psychology of that program will be going into the bowl game. You have to kind of look and say, where is this program at in their development, and how does that relate to what they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah,
some
absolutely.
teams, are trying to win that game because they're trying to get, I say everybody's trying to win once they take the field, but their preparation is more about we want to springboard this to next year.
Yeah, we're trying to get some momentum here.
Yeah.
The funny part for people is going to be us watching players opt out of games that aren't going to the NFL. They're opting out of games because they're going to go in a portal, or they're heading off to another school, and they're going to be dressed in different colors in college football next year. That's going to be a difficult pill to swallow for people ages 32 and up, watching that unfold, as it did some last year, but it will do so more this year.
Oh, yeah. And as we go into the holiday season, as guys our age who've been blessed and probably have everything we need in our stocking, unless someone's putting a Porsche 911 in my driveway, okay? Right. If I had a wish that I could get Santa to bring me, it would be to fix the transfer portal. Fix the portal, and I will be satisfied that college football is closer to what I wanted 20 years ago. I can deal with the money part, even though I don't love it. I can deal with that. I can say, well, it is what it is. The portal is what's kind of bugging me at this point. The constant hopping around without restriction, without any number of times almost. I would, if they could get that a little bit more uniform, as we've talked about, maybe if there's a coaching change or something, where a guy can't go boom, 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 and you're on like your 15.
Yeah, Emily, it seems like the NCAA is acting like spoiled little kids. It's like, oh, well, if we can't have this thing the way that we've always had it, and, the courts say that we got to pay these kids and these kids can make moves, then we're not going to regulate anything. You guys do it. Have at it. You guys wanted this. Have at it. Let's see what it looks like. Instead of being an adult and say, hey, there was an old way of doing things. There's a new era in. Let's maintain our love for college football and usher in this new era in an organized way, in some way that makes sense, that it's still good for the players and the coaches, right, as well as for the fans. I've never cared for the NCAA.
No.
And they're showing their ass, so to speak, with this.
Yeah, it's very bizarre to me that you're allowing kids to just like I said, 5 years, 5 schools. I mean, we know we're dealing with young people, most of them under the age of 20 in a lot of cases. Well, not a large portion of them. They don't get what they want, and they're transferring. And I've said this to somebody this week. The way I'm starting to view this is like this, right? You take some of the blue blood programs, Ohio State, Texas, Miami, USC's over the years. They would have freshmen and sophomores that developed. Then late sophomore, junior year, they'd step into a starting role. They were in the program a couple of years, and they just kept it going.
Yeah, that's dead in your upper tier programs now.
Yeah, what seems to happen now is this. Those schools, the freshmen and sophomores that aren't playing enough, they bounce to a different school. So as kids graduate out, they're going in the portal for other kids from other schools and putting them in. Everybody's kind of trading 4 and 5 stars that didn't play in other programs. And the reason it's hard to handicap is you got to figure who can assimilate the best, what coaches are doing the best job of assimilating new players into systems quickly, because that's what's happening. So you don't have a lot of continuity. So in the old days, you'd look at a team and go, here's the depth chart. Here's how many guys are coming back. I feel really good about where this team's going to be headed.
Yeah, you can't even make that discussion with a recruit, at least not with any grounds of, truth. You can't be solid on any of that. You could show a kid a depth chart in December or before the signing date and tell him this, that, and the third, but you don't know that for sure. And I'm sure lies get told. I'm sure lies get told where you say, hey, this one and that one are going in the portal, and then they don't go in the portal.
And the other thing I don't care for is, the NIL, or at least the premise behind it was, okay, everybody's benefiting financially off name, image, and likeness other than the kids, so let's get them some money. Well, from what I heard, and I don't know how true it is, but it seems like it would make sense. And I'm no fan necessarily of LSU or Brian Kelly sometimes, but he is a good coach. He's got that Underwood kid committed. And then next thing you know, I hear Michigan made like a large NIL offer. And all of a sudden, so I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, I know that's not the topic. We're a sports betting podcast, but this ties into handicapping. But what are we doing here? I mean, like, that seems to me like free agency. And if that's the case, like Nick said,
without any type of cap on any of this, and, going back to what you said about the transfer portal, there is obviously a group out there that says, well, the coaches are free to move and do and whatever they please and go wherever they want. And we see them leaving on right after signing day, et cetera, et cetera. True. This is a fact. And we're talking about the adults here. However, you don't see a coach going to 4 schools in 5 years. You don't see it like that. This has gotten hyper on that end. And there's like an overcompensation for what has not been allowed in the past. But nevertheless, it is what it is. We're not here to get down on college football because, to be honest, the product on the field, as you have mentioned before, has been great. The regular season has mattered. Even in the 12-team playoff system, the regular season has mattered. And
I love it. And I'm going to tell you something. Next year, no, not next year, the year after, they're going to what should be the final model, or at least close to it, the 14-team NFL model, where the top 2 seeds will get a bye.
Right.
And then you'll get 2 extra games essentially out of it. So you'll get a first round with 6 games, a second round with 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing my math correct, I think I am. Or a second round with 4 games. So you're going to get 13 total games instead of 11, the way the NFL does. I'm telling you, when we get to the 14-team model, I'll guarantee you Big Ten and SEC will place teams in that tournament with 3 losses. There'll be 9-3 teams, because if you look at those conferences, they're brutal. They've essentially
and it's really going to upset folks that are not part of the Big Ten and the SEC, which you already have some grumblings on that. Understandably so, because it looks like over the last few weeks, the SEC has either beat each other up or it's turned out to be not so good. Texas would look like a juggernaut against Michigan, but now maybe not so much. Georgia certainly has fallen short of what people thought they were going to be coming into the season. Mississippi's fraud card got dropped on the turf there against the Gators last week. LSU certainly hasn't lived up to the bill. Oklahoma is fighting to not be 500.
But I
So,
also think, Chad, we have to be honest that those conferences, when you're on the road in one of those two conferences, it's significantly different. I mean, I'm not taking a poke at, like you look at the Big 12. Cincinnati's a good middle of the road program. But I mean, you can't compare the middles
yeah,
of
but I was going to say, as people look at those upper tier teams, they look at the Texases, the Georgias, the Oklahomas, and the Alabamas, and maybe some of their shortcomings. They're not recognizing what South Carolina has turned into this year. They're not recognizing that Vanderbilt, out of nowhere, has turned into a team that's one to reckon with, and that Texas A&M has hung in there. So it's the depth of
Or
a
take a look, we're talking SEC. Look at the Big Ten, even the center of the Big Ten this year.
right.
I mean,
Well, who saw Indiana being,
no, but I mean, look at USC and Minnesota and some of the other schools, Washington, that are 6-5. If you go to their place, they can beat you.
you can't be mad if you're these other conferences at the SEC and the Big Ten because it mattered more to them and they made the football moves that
Right.
strengthened their conferences and put them in the forefront of college football. You can't be upset with them for that,
No,
So
I mean, get case in point. Penn State's going to be a playoff team this year. USC took them to overtime. Penn State needed 2 fourth-down conversions to even keep that game alive. And I mean, that was a road game in the Big Ten against a team that's going to finish 500.
yeah, there's no questioning the depth of the Big Ten and the SEC if you're the ACC and the Big 12. I mean, you should just get out of that whole argument. You should sit that one out. If you're in the ACC or if you're a fan of the ACC or the Big 12, you're just not those two conferences. So, yeah, they should have more members from their conference in this 12-team playoff. And if things continue the way that they are, they will have more members of their conferences in the 14-team playoff. You better just celebrate the top guys in your conference and hope to get to it because that's kind of what you deserve.
One thing people have to get through their heads with both, there's such a difference. The NFL is essentially homogenous scheduling. I mean, everybody, by and large, plays the same schedule, pretty close. There's a lot, there's only 32 teams. You play 17 games. You're going to have a lot of ways to compare teams where there's at least 2 or 3 common opponents on almost everybody's schedule. You don't have that in college football. I mean, a schedule from a team in the SEC or the Big Ten is generally not comparable to a team from the ACC.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, let's get to some picks. First, Emil, you got to tell the folks, unfortunately, at least how I did last week, how we did as a unit.
Nobody's patting themselves on the back regardless of a week because we admit our college football has not been up to snuff. You in the main games, before we get off the sheet, you had Pitt. Pitt was a no-show. I don't know what happened at Pittsburgh after that start, but that performance last week was embarrassing. I was texting.
I've got to tell you, I've been burned by some ACC teams that have just laid down this year. Some of my worst losses have been ACC teams, and I just don't know what's going on there with.
And then you made a popular pick, and it seemed to be what most people liked. The line shot when we made the pick, and you made it at Indiana plus 13. That game ended up 10.5 at game time. So obviously,
I thought it went even lower than that, but
yeah, the money was coming in hot and heavy on Indiana, and frankly, in that game, at least that week, they were outclassed. I mean,
yeah, they weren't ready to be on the porch with the big dogs.
No, the talent was not a fluke. Let me put it this way: the talent gap was evident if you watch the game.
Yeah,
and then finally, you got a winner, and this was my off the sheet play. We'll get to that later, but you had Fresno State. They made us sweat a little, kind of. They were up 28-7 going into the fourth, dominated the game, and ended up winning 28-22. They were only given 3.5, so that was a winner. You finished the week at 1-2. Year to date in college, 16-23. I had the same total year to date record, 16-23. I was 2-1 last week. My loser, Texas, very disappointed with Texas. I'm not liking what I'm seeing there. They ended up winning by 17, but they made that game very difficult against Kentucky. And I think, unless they figure some stuff out quickly, if they do get into playoff, they could be out very quickly. couple picks I'm very proud of, though. Florida plus 10.5. You mentioned Ole Miss getting the fraud card out. Florida was an outright winner. I had a
Very
feeling.
good pick by you. Very good.
Yeah, I had a feeling that I really like, for Florida fans that listen to the show, Napier's done a hell of a job. You should probably give him a raise. Don't consider firing him. Because when you looked at that schedule at the beginning of the year,
Well,
there's
they've
no
announced
way.
he's coming back, so
Yeah,
that's off the table. But
yes.
this team's got a really strong chance. I mean, pretty much they're going to be a 7-5 football team, and the best you were hoping for going into the season was 5-7, and even that seemed like a stretch
Yes.
when the season started. So they've done a tremendous job.
7-5, and if you look at the losses, the teams that they really, really played a good game against, like Georgia, where it was 20 all in the third quarter.
You
I
could beat
mean,
Tennessee and Georgia.
yeah, he did a good job there, and that was a good pick on my part. I'm happy with that one. And the other one I liked, I took Minnesota plus 11. If there's a guy in the Big Ten that does more with less than PJ Fleck, I'm not aware of it. I mean, I love him as a coach. I think he's probably a guy that's wallowing in anonymity at Minnesota. I think if you gave him the right program and resources, I think this guy would win anywhere. And they gave Penn State all they could handle. They lost by one. The only thing I didn't like in that game, honestly, it was 26-22, 4.5, 5 minutes left. They were fourth and goal, I think, at the Penn State 8. I thought they should have went for it at that point. I felt like kicking the field goal, you might never get the ball back. If you get stopped, then you put your defense on the field. Hopefully you hold them and they don't flip the field on you, and you're still going to get the ball back in good field position. I kind of felt like play for the win there. He kind of went to his conservative roots, kicked the field goal. It's like, but nonetheless, Minnesota was an easy one, so we got the win there.
All right, I'm going to go first this week.
Yes, please.
In college football, I'm going to start off with my good friends at Baylor and Dave Aranda at home. Listen, Kansas pulled off the big win in the primetime game. Not often when you're the Kansas Jayhawks that you're in a marquee football game going against a team that obviously gets a whole lot of attention, and rightfully so this year with the Colorado Buffaloes, especially with how they've played. And, you've got a Heisman Trophy candidate there, and you've got a potential number 1 overall pick at quarterback, and just everything that Colorado's been able to do. So they were in a marquee game last week, came out with a big win. Everyone sees them, so, little extra and cheese behind them there this week. And then, Kansas is, after all, a 5-6 football team, so they probably are not going to be able to handle this newfound success that they've had. Kansas is 1-4 this year on the road. Emil, I still am stunned by them getting that win at BYU. I don't see them being able to duplicate that because, quite frankly, they've not been a good team on the road this year. Baylor is won 5 straight, and all but one of those 5 wins, Emil, have been by double digits. Baylor's for real at this point. They started off the year slow, but they have become a legit force, and they're flying under the radar. All of the eyes are on KU. I think that's how this line has been built. So I'm going to take Baylor as a home underdog in this game, especially with KU coming off of that big win. And for you folks out there, KU is Kansas. All right, moving over here next. Indiana, you got humbled last week. You got slapped around. You've got people saying, well, we knew you guys didn't belong in the thick of things. You don't belong in a college football playoff. Well, a perfect thing's going to happen here for you. You get Purdue to come to town this week, and you can go flex your muscles against a team that has been, Emil, this is like historic patheticness, if I could say something like that. Purdue has faced 4 ranked teams this year, Emil. They've been outscored 195-17 in those games. They are just not competitive at all in those contests. And Indiana is going to pour it on. They are going to be point spread watchers this week. And they've gotten to 40-plus 7 times this year. There's no way they don't get above 40 points right here. I really feel like they're going to I really see them scoring 52 points. I don't really see Purdue finding their way past 10 points. That's been the max they've been able to score against anyone that has any kind of oomph to them this year. So a 52-10 game is really in the works here. That gives me the easy cover with Indiana out looking to flex up on somebody. And then finally, Emil, Oklahoma really got a lot of wind behind their sails with that win over Alabama last week, especially in the fashion in which they did it. They dominated the Crimson Tide. A 24-3 victory is exactly what the doctor ordered in what has become a bit of a disappointing season for Oklahoma. No one expected them to be out front running in the SEC. No one expected them to be out in the middle of things. They're a little bit of ways away from that, but no one really expected them to be fighting to be above 500 this year. And that's really what is at stake for Oklahoma going into this game. At 6-5, I think they are highly motivated to end this regular season with a winning record. It would mean something to them. We talked about the bowl season, like what's the motivation for teams going into next year. 7-5 sounds a whole lot better than 6-6. So Oklahoma has two things here. They've got all the confidence of the way they were able to handle the Crimson Tide last week, and they have the motivation of trying to finish this regular season going into the bowl season with a winning record. LSU, on the other hand, has already secured a winning record, but that's not what they were looking for this year. We're talking about an LSU team and program that has been in the mix over the last few years. And now you've got this thing where you're not really in the mix. Nothing is on the table here for you. You're going to have a winning season. You're not going to be in the college football playoff. There isn't a bowl game that you are going to be eligible for that you're going to give a damn about. So it's time for these guys at LSU to start thinking about their brand, what next school they're going to go to, or their pro football prospects. And it just looks like not a well-oiled operation handling there right now. If you watch Brian Kelly's interaction with players on the sideline, if you just watch some of his mannerisms and antics, it just seems like a ship that is sinking. I'm not saying for the future. I still have confidence in Brian Kelly that he'll, get LSU where they need to go. But in this 2024 season, their prospects are down. Oklahoma's up. So give me Oklahoma as a 6-point underdog in this game on the road versus LSU.
So my friend here loves Baylor plus 1.5 at home over Kansas. The Indiana Hoosiers to run it up and get themselves into that.
Big time. They're going to ring that cash register, baby.
Minus 29. And then finally, Oklahoma grabbing 6 against LSU. Chad, you gave much more analysis than I'm going to need for my picks. Because mine are, I think, simpleton picks. Because I'm not going to overthink.
That simple works.
First game, I'm going Boise State minus 18.5 over Oregon State. Oregon State got their win in their only Pac-12 game this year, because there's only 2 teams in the Pac-12. They beat Washington State last week. Prior to that, they had 3 or 4 games that were absolutely abysmal if you go and look down their schedule. If there's a team out there that doesn't want to blow this season and what they're looking at, I mean, everything's in front of Boise State. Hard for me to believe I'm saying that. They've taken the number 1 team in the country, at least as of right now, Oregon. They took them to the mat, lost by 3 points. Their only loss of the year. There's no way they're not going to run this score up on Saturday against Oregon State and put themselves in position to really make some noise in this first college football playoff. This one has 45-17, something like that written all over it. Boise State minus 8.5. Second game. This is the bitterness in me, but my friend lost last week on Pitt. I don't know what's happened to Pitt. They were flying high, and it's just been bing, 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 bing. 1 minute they're 7-0. Now I think they're 7-4. They lose a game on a 50-yard scramble with a minute and a half left against Clemson. Last week they were a no-show at Louisville. Now they get a trip up to Chestnut Hill right outside Boston to play a feisty Boston College team that's going in the other direction. Boston College is 6-5. To my friend's point, they're staring a winning season right in the push. Pitt, while the expectations at the beginning of the year, if you told them you could be 8-4, that might have been, hey, that's great. Pitt's looking at this going, man, we were what, 7-0? I mean, we were thinking ACC championship game. Now you're playing out the string. They're going to go up on the road, short trip to Boston. They're going to get drilled. Boston College wins this easy. Give me Boston College minus 4.5. And then finally, my favorite bully, I called him a bully because when they get in a spot like this, they normally kill the team. Penn State it is. They're playing Maryland. And here's the thing. Penn State has to win this game. If they lose this game, they're going to be out of the college football playoff. There's no way they're going to take Maryland lightly. They're not going to screw around. This feels like 56-20 Penn State. I mean, I just see touchdowns. I see Singleton running. I see flea flickers, backup quarterback coming and throwing the ball. Penn State's going to just blow out Maryland. This was an old rivalry game back from the old days when they were an independent. They played Maryland every year when Boomer Esiason was there. For you younger folks, you don't know who he is. He's on TV now. He was a great quarterback at Maryland. Penn State, big this week.
All right, summarizing things here, my man Emil is taking Boise State with everything in front of them, he says, as 18-point favorites versus
18
Oregon.
and a half.
18 and a half point favorites over Oregon State, one of the two teams in a conference that's called the Pac-12. Figure that one out. He likes Pittsburgh to continue on their downswing when they travel to Boston College against a physical Eagles football team. He likes BC, minus 4.5. And finally, he thinks the bully keeps bullying Penn State, runs through Maryland like, well, I don't even want to say it. But anyway, bully around Maryland. He thinks they're going to be point spread watching. They need a dominant performance heading into the...
Yeah, you know what? The big thing and the good thing at Penn State, when you're there, Penn State, you want to keep the back door closed.
Oh, for God's sake.
And yes, the back door will be closed. It will be closed.
Back door in Penn State, we don't need to talk about because it's been legendary there. But anyway, Penn State minus 25 over Maryland. All right, let's get out of the
Hey, sports fans, if you're looking to take your game day excitement to a whole new level, then you got to check out Bovada Sportsbook. Whether you're into football, basketball, it's baseball, playoff times, pretty much any sport, Bovada has everything you need. Best odds, live betting, and fast, secure payouts. And here's the best part. When you sign up today, Bovada is giving you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's up to $250. That's free money to get you started just for joining the action. It's super easy to sign up, and they've got you covered with all the top games, player props, and more. Ready to bet, win, and repeat? Head over to Bovada and get in the game. Check out the link down in the description below, and let's go get those winners.
Off the sheet. Let's get the off the sheets out, okay? Because last week, I already talked about it. I won my off the sheet. I used your game. My off the sheet was Fresno State. So I got back off my little mini losing streak. I'm 5-3 off the sheet. You had a nice little streak going of wins, and now you started a little losing streak with that Western Kentucky pick. Okay, you're 3-5 off the sheet. I don't know what they were doing. Why don't you go first? Because you need to break that little losing streak.
I don't mind if I do. I'm going to go to the Service Academy, someone that you have used earlier this year with great success. As it turns out, Emil, listen, there was a talk and a fight maybe in the minds of those who care about the service academies as to whether or not Army or Navy was the better football team. I think Army has kind of established themselves as that. With that being said, they went to South Bend last week and got humbled, 49-14. I don't know how many push-ups that gets you this week, but whatever amount it is, they're going to come into this game super motivated. This is as good as maybe even in our just generation, as good an Army team and season that they've had. That was their first loss of the year, and it came all the way towards the end of November. They want to keep that going, and in comes UTSA. I think Army's going to be highly motivated in this game. They play really, really good defense. That's obviously in conjunction with their ball control offense. That is the absolute remedy for what UTSA is. Army has held 5 teams under 10 points this year. I think they ratchet up the defense after giving up 49 points last week. UTSA comes to town. I think the reason this line has been held down a little bit because we're talking about a 10-1 football team against a 6-5 football team. And Army's only 7 here. And the reason that number's been held down is because UTSA does something that fans, casuals watching college football really like, and that is score a bunch of points. What they don't do, Emil, is invest in defense. That's not a thing that they do. They have given up 40-plus points in 4 straight weeks, or they've scored 40 points in 4 straight weeks, but they just don't play defense at all. It's routine for them to give up 30 and 40 points in games this year. And it flows well for them when they can just get the ball and move down the field. What Army's going to do is control that line of scrimmage. This game is going to be a little similar to what we saw Georgia Tech do against Miami. Control the line of scrimmage, limit your possessions, limit the amount of plays that you run, and frustrate you and get you into making bad calls, taking chances. And I think that's what's going to happen at UTSA as Army just dominates, is more physical here, and is more motivated. I like them as almost 7-point favorites as my off-the-sheet pick.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. These kind of teams will frustrate a school like UTSA because as you're standing there watching Army run play after play after play, when you get the ball, it's like all of a sudden you start acting out of character, a couple turnovers, and this game gets crazy. I'm on a favorite myself. It's a rivalry game as they go. Louisiana playing Louisiana Monroe. And I'll keep it simple. Louisiana is a 9.5-point road favorite for a reason. They're a 9-2 football team. They're a good football team. Monroe, not so much. Monroe's an inconsistent football team that, they have some wins on their schedule, of course. I think they're 6-5 if I have my memory serving me correctly. But a lot of choppiness in their season, and they're playing a pretty consistent Louisiana team that could actually finish off a great campaign and be, this is the kind of team I'll keep an eye on in the bowl season, depending on how they do this week, which I think is going to be a resounding win, obviously, because they're going to look to cap off what's been a great campaign in whatever bowl game they're in. And I think they go out and in this rivalry game, they do something that I'm hesitant to take a road favorite like this. This line's kind of telling me something. They're a lot better than Monroe, at least Vegas feels that way. And I think Louisiana is an easy winner here, giving 9.5.
Yeah, and a chance for them to get to double-digit wins this season. So a motivating factor there for them. So my man Emil is going with Louisiana. What's your line there?
9.5.
9.5-point favorites versus.
Now, you know what? You know what is next? I get to pick the game because I won our college head-to-head last week.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Good old BYU is tanking here at the end of the year.
Listen, Arizona State last week, they're quietly having themselves a very good surprise. I mean,
out of nowhere, no one saw this coming.
No one saw 9-2 coming for Arizona State. So good for them. I mean, it'd be interesting first year in the Big 12 and the Big 12 title game. That'd be pretty cool. We get something different on the screen to watch. I don't know who. At this point, I'm having a hard time figuring out the tiebreakers of who's playing who and what it is. I'll just let it play out. I'm not going to try to figure it out. But since I get to pick this week, pick a game that I want to be wrong on, and anybody who watches the show regularly knows that. But I'm also an honest broker. I try to be. And I think this line...
I feel like my man is hedging with me here.
I think this line is jacked up. Say what you want about that early loss Notre Dame inexplicably took from Northern Illinois. And you can say what you want about Notre Dame's schedule because they can only play the schedule that was given to them. And it hasn't been very good. But they haven't just won the game since then. They've essentially dominated teams. I mean, they've just flat out destroyed people. And I'm looking at this line where they're giving my Trojans only 7.5. And there's just a couple things that I think are going against USC here other than home field. Lincoln Riley made a quarterback change, and he probably should have looked at his entire quarterback situation differently from the jump. He did what all of us like to see happen, people who love college football. He gave Miller Moss the job. Moss hung around the program, had a great bowl game against Louisville. Yet he had a kid coming in as a sophomore, transfer from UNLV, all Mountain West freshman of the year. USC poached him from Georgia, so you know the kid can play. Georgia was recruiting him. He's a talented kid, big arm, 6'4", athletic. Problem is he should have been playing probably from the beginning. Lincoln's job is to be objective. My job is to say, wow, that's great that Miller Moss is playing. I'm a fan. I'm watching this kid, and I like what I'm seeing except for one thing. He has no experience. It's only going to be his third or fourth start at USC. He's playing a great Notre Dame defense, and he's got the one thing. He's got the Caleb Williams gene. He wants to spin out of things and run around and throw the ball. And he's going to be looking at Irish defenders that are at a different level from anything he's seen in the Mountain West or in his few starts so far at USC. That's going to be a problem. I think there's a couple big turnovers here, fumble, interceptions, 2 or 3 of them. Final score feels like 34-17 Notre Dame.
I don't know about that. Not so fast, my friends. To steal a line from Lee Corso here, I see a guy who's just now gotten into the lineup. This is going to be game number 3. Am I correct? Game number 3,
game
4?
3. Yep.
Third game. This is a chance for this kid to get even better and grow. It's not like in the NFL, where I always say that third game for the backup quarterback, that's where a guy is going to turn into a pumpkin. Not so at this college level. And you said it yourself. This is a quarterback who should have been starting from the beginning of the year because, he just had all the characteristics, let us say. And I think now in this third game, it's just another chance for him to step up his play. When I look at the motivation here, Notre Dame has been declared a good football team this year. They're declared a good football team almost every year, but now they can back it up with the 10-1 record. They're not fighting really for anything here. They don't have to do any point spread watching. A win over their rival USC will suffice. USC, if they lose this football game, end the year at 6-6, man, the noise will get loud in Los Angeles if that is the case. I mean, the Dodgers just won the World Series, for God's sakes. You can't be hopping around. And the Lakers look like they're going to be good this year. Yes, USC's got a little stink on them, too much to get it all off, but you beat Notre Dame. You upset Notre Dame. You can leave this season feeling good, kind of no matter what happens in your bowl game. I think we're going to get the USC that USC got from UCLA last week. UCLA fought their ass off in that game. I think USC will do the same. And I will dare say that Notre Dame is the better football team, but they'll win by the same 6 points that USC beat UCLA by last week. I can see a 27-21 football game here because on this side note, USC, you complained about this last year, and rightfully so. If they're doing anything this year, it's playing better defense, and they have held 3 of their last 4 opponents to 20 points or less, and even in the loss against Washington, they gave up 26 points. I think their defense comes to play right here and keeps them close.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I'd rather you be right than me, but I don't feel it, my friend. So let's slide over to the one thing that we have seemed to figure out this year, the NFL. Okay?
Yes, and we could start on just how close I came to being 3-0 last week.
Well,
and how I ended up 1-2.
Let's talk just some records, and then we'll get into the details. In the last 4 weeks, I'm 8-4. Okay. And you're sitting there at 8-4. Okay, so that's what, 16-8. Pretty good.
You gotta love that, folks, if you're out there.
Last week, despite a losing week for yourself, we'll get into the details. You were 1-2, but your season record still sits at 25-10, which is insane. almost 72%. I had a 1-2 week, which dropped me back to 500. But again, like I said, I'm on an 8-4 run. So we'll get into the details first with you. You had a loser on the Vikings giving 3.5. Now, anybody who is unfamiliar, let me describe the end of this game. The Vikings are up 11.
Completely bogus, by the way.
Vikings are up 11 points. Bears score with 20-some seconds left, go for 2, 27-24. He's going to be a loser at this point anyway, so he gets some luck. The Bears recover the onside kick, and Santos, Mr. Line Drive into the back of a lineman, he makes the field goal, sends it into overtime.
I thought that was me, getting an olive branch extended by the betting gods.
But no, because the Vikings can't get the walk-off 6-point overtime win at the NFL.
Well, they didn't get the ball first. That hurt.
Get the ball first, and that was the problem. Once they get the ball first, they got the ball second, and when you get the ball second...
Yeah, I needed them to win the toss and get the ball first.
Otherwise, field goal. So he loses there. Vikings getting 3.5. Anybody out there who lost, you didn't follow any rules of the show, Shame on you. You should not have laid the 3.5. But he takes a loss for purposes of our show. The second loser was actually hard to believe, okay?
Let me stop you for 1 second. Let's educate the folks out there. We're talking about NFL football games. What are the point spreads where a player should go ahead if their book allows them to buy a point, half point, tease lines, whatever? What are the point spreads in the NFL that they need to do that on?
The threes, okay, so when you're 3.5, depending on what side you're going to be on, right? If you're going to be on the favorite side, you should never lay 3.5. Ever.
What about laying 3 if you have the ability to take it to 2.5?
Do it. Usually, I mean, listen, when you're talking about the little bit of vig you're paying, I mean, NFL games, go look. 3s and 7s are huge.
You know, there is, I think there's either a Twitter page or a matter of fact, I'm going to look this up while you're making your picks. I think there is a Twitter page or there is a website where it's called, I think, Scorinami or Scorigami or something like that, where they show you how many times in history a game, a certain score has happened in a game, like 20-17, or how many times teams have won by 3 points, by 7 points, by 10
And I'll
points.
even tell you this. 3s and 7s are obviously huge. But the other thing I've noticed going back to this Viking game, and I've started doing this, if it's 6, if the organic line is 6.5, so you say, okay, 6.5, I'm good, because if they win by 7, I win. If it's not too cost prohibitive, and it usually isn't, I'll bring it back to 6 for the simple reason, if the game gets to overtime, I can potentially get a push.
Right.
And that's with the new rule of getting the walk-off at 6. You understand that a team is going to try to score that 6 if they get the ball first. So if it's 6.5 and I've got to pay 115 or 117 versus 110.
I think the highest you will go from 110 is to maybe 130. Maybe if you've got to buy that half point, but you're probably right. 115.
It depends which number, but usually, like if I take a 6.5 back to a 6, it's not even that much.
Right. No, at 3, I think is where you get the most.
3 is when you usually get the number. So anyway.
By the way, well, it's called NFL Scorigami, SCORIGAMI.com. And they will give you a complete breakdown on scores and chances and probabilities of numbers being landed on. So your big thing is 3 and 7 and 6?
The 6 for that reason. Like I'm saying, I'm not going to take a line from 7. If it's 7, I'm not going to take it all the way back to 6. But if I see a line that's 6.5 and I'm like, okay, yeah, you could lay the 6.5 and your team wins by 7, you're fine. I kind of look at like, hey, games go overtime a lot, and you see this anymore where games 27 all, it ends up 33-27. So if I can, for a little bit, bring it back to 6, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, good. We got that out of the way. You can finish up on how.
And the other one,
the rest of my week.
You probably think about this, right? If you have a team, say you like a team plus 7.5, so you figure, I'm good, right? For a little bit, I'll bring it to 8. Because if I'm taking 7.5, you'll see games that end up teams down 30-14. They'll try to get in the back door. They'll score, go for 2, 30-22. They lose the game. At least you get a push. Like, I try to think through. Obviously, there's a system. You want to make sure the money, you're not going to pay 110 to 135 to do that. But if it's a couple bucks, why not? And I think fans have to really pay attention to this stuff as we have the online sites and the ability to move for a couple bucks, move a line.
Right. Agreed.
Okay.
All right. Carrying on. Minnesota screwed me. Carry on.
Minnesota screwed you. Then he had the Raiders. Let me set this one up for folks. This one's special. The Raiders, being the Raiders, are getting 6. They're down 26-19 with about 3 minutes left. Raiders turn the ball over. Broncos run it into the line 3 times. Oh, no, wait. The Broncos even threw an incomplete pass to make sure the clock stopped. That was even better yet.
Beautiful, masterful time management.
Beautiful time management. The Broncos kick a field goal. They're up 10. Raiders do what the Raiders do. Their backup quarterback's in. They go walk the ball right down the field. They've 1st and goal. It gets good here now. First and goal at the 1 yard line
it was so damn close that the player prior to that first and goal got into the end zone. It had to be reviewed.
Yes. So they're this far away. They have 2 timeouts, or 1 timeout at least, maybe 2. First and goal at the 1. The first play they run is a pass. It's incomplete. So second and goal at the 1. Quarterback passes again. Now they have a timeout, folks. They can run the ball. They can quarterback sneak it. He goes back. He gets sacked. The Raiders still have a timeout. They just do an F it. they don't even call a timeout. It's almost like you're starting to wonder, does somebody in the Raiders coaching staff have Denver here? I mean, usually teams are doing everything they can to score. I've never seen that.
It's stuff like that gets you fired, man. You know what I'm saying? It's stuff like that really gets you your walking papers. And so I think Antonio Pierce is probably on thin ice there. The Raiders were good to me early in the year, Emil, and this is the thing about, sports betting and handicapping. Something that was working so well at one point in the season can totally flip around on you on the other end. So, yeah. I'm going to lay off the Raiders for a little minute.
Yeah, so anyway, you had a winner. Good for you outright, right? The Titans with an upset. You kind of called.
Part of that pick.
Yeah, that was a good pick. You kind of called the Texans as you watched them beat my Cowboys. The score was more not reflective to the way the game went. You kind of looked at it and said, it didn't look that great. So anyway, good for you. That was your win. My week was I went against my Cowboys. I took the Redskins given 10.5. Dallas did their damnedest to try to lose a game that they dominated. I mean, that game.
Emil, let's talk about that for one quick second. I have been, and I made this tweet. When I was born, Nixon was president. So go ahead, y'all, do the math. All right? That tells you I've been watching football for a very long time. Emil, I don't think I've ever seen a game like that. Between the missed field goals, the kick return opportunities, guys getting knocked out, just everything that could happen in a game happened, and it all happened within a 2-minute space of time. It was mind-boggling. I was watching that with my oldest son, Quincy, and we were just laughing back and forth at what was
I never saw a team. I mean, I watched this game, unfortunately. It was the only game on, and I was forced to watch my own team. They dominated the game. I mean, literally, Washington, who's been an offensive juggernaut, Dallas is starting to get some guys back like Parsons and Bland. Now, Diggs didn't play, but the score's 20-9 with 5 minutes left in the game. And it's almost like Zimmer said, let's do something different than what we did for the first 55 minutes. Washington walks the ball down the field, 2-pointer. Okay, so now you're like, okay, we're going to figure out a way to lose, 20-17. There's 3 minutes left. No. Turpin, kick return. Okay, it's over, 27-17.
Not over.
Walk it right down the field. And Quinn is smart enough to take the field goal with a minute some left because he figures I need 2 scores anyway. Right. The kicker, by the way, has made one. He's missed like 5 of 6 from over 50 yards. Quinn takes the field goal from 51, so you're figuring Dan doesn't know that this kid is over 50. But he somehow makes this one. So now it's 27-20. They get the ball back, okay, with 14 seconds or 15 seconds left in the game, no timeouts. They're on their own 20. The Washington receiver catches him on the Dallas 45. All you got to do is bring the guy to the ground. The game's over. By the time everybody gets up to the line, you might get one more play, a Hail Mary. He catches the ball and runs. He was looking around like, nobody's going to tackle me? I mean, am I wrong?
Unbelievable, man.
Did he not look surprised that he was running down the field?
I suppose, if you're not used to being in that situation, but yeah.
Anyway, Dallas wins the game outright by 8. That was a loser for me. Shame on me. I'm not taking a game against the Lions again this year. Either I'm taking the Lions or I'm forgetting the game because
you see, I don't mess with them anymore.
No, that team is on a mission.
Best team in the NFL right now.
Yeah, they're just killing people. They beat the Colts on the road 24-6. It was a loser. My one win, I kind of felt like the Dolphins are starting to get on a little roll. and the Patriots were the right medicine. And I'm really seeing that the Rams aren't very good. We'll talk about that in our head-to-head section because the Patriots look much better offensively against the Rams than they did against the Dolphins. So that was my winner. So again, we were both 1-2, but we've been hot in the NFL. I'm going to start first since you went first in college. I'll make it simple. The Rams, I'm a closet Rams fan. They're not good. Defensively, they've got problems, and even a great coach like McVay, he can't mask these problems. For some reason, the Saints have found a little of the magic from the beginning of the year. They won 2 in a row. I don't know why the bookmakers feel compelled to make the Rams a road favorite after a Monday night game, and that's fine by me.
Kind of makes you wonder, but yeah.
They can make. I'm going to be stupid. If it's going to be stupid, consider me stupid. Give me the Saints plus 2.5. I don't think the Rams can win this game on the road. Next up, the Vikings played with fire last week. They didn't get burned. The Cardinals are tied for first place in their division. No, I'm not misspeaking. The Cardinals are tied for first place. Last week was not indicative of how they've been playing this year. Seattle's a tough place to play. They played that game in the rain, 16-6. It was just not good offensive football weather. There's not better offensive football weather than Minnesota, right? Inside.
Yeah.
Fast track. I'm a big Kyler Murray fan. This game has the feeling of one of those shootouts. At the end, the guy with the funny shoe decides it. But guess what? We're getting 3.5 here. I'm going to take the Cardinals plus 3.5. Finally, another game. I'd love to root for the other team. I'd prefer the Ravens win this game. But guess what? I'm changing my pick. I really think the Super Bowl is going to be the Bills and the Eagles. As well as the Lions are playing, the one thing I see with the Eagles this year is their Saquon Barkley has shown people that a dominant running back can be very important. He's masking the mistakes of what Hurts makes when you ask him to throw the ball 40 times. Hurts doesn't have to throw the ball 40 times anymore. He can run play action. The play action has to be respected because you've got a back who's going to run for 2,000 yards, okay? The Ravens are uncharacteristically not a very good football team defensively this year. They're playing a semi-short week. They played the late Sunday game against they played the Monday game against the Chargers. So they're coming home. Yes. So they're coming home. They're playing a hot Eagles team, and they're going to give the Eagles 3 points. Like, I figured this would be like a 1-point spread. I'm getting a full field goal here. I think the Eagles win the game outright, but I feel very comfortable that this is a game that's decided at the very end if the Ravens win it. So give me the Eagles plus 3.
All right. Emil is going to fade the Rams this week after taking them in the head-to-head segment last week. Doesn't think they're a good football team, so he's going to back the Saints as home dogs, 2.5. He is going to take Arizona, who's on the road against Minnesota, thinks this thing is going to be a shootout. They're getting 3.5 points. He says, give me all of those points. And then he is going to jump on the Eagles bandwagon, as reluctant as he probably is to do that. We have a weekend, folks, where this guy is going to take both the Philadelphia Eagles and the Penn State Nittany Lions. He finally has remembered where he lives. He's got the Eagles plus 3 against the Baltimore Ravens. All right, let me.
What's that say? Oh, I don't live in LA.
Yeah, no. Step outside and you'll quickly realize you're not in Los Angeles. All right, for me, I'm going with a Thursday night game, a turkey game. It is going to be between 21 and 32 degrees in Green Bay, Wisconsin on Thursday. It's also going to be windy. We've already seen what that looks like when one Tua Tagovailoa plays in that. He has nothing for that. The offense does not work in that kind of weather. Oh, and to boot, they're playing a pretty good football team in the Green Bay Packers. This is where they make their hay, their living. This is their time of year. I don't see how. This line blew me away because I really thought the Dolphins would be near a touchdown underdog in this game, given what we know to be of that offense in this kind of weather. The fact that it's 3, maybe I'm getting tricked, but I don't think so. I think this is Packers weather, Packers time. The Dolphins are going here on a short week in this weather that is not conducive to what it is that they do. Give me Green Bay as a 3-point favorite here. Seattle is on a roll. The Jets are grounded. Everything looks bad about the Jets. They fired the coach. They fired they demoted assistants. They've fired the general manager. They've fired people that park the cars, that clean the cars. They've fired people that stock the vending machines. It is just a complete shit show in New York right now. Yet and still, odds makers continue to try and sell us this candy on the New York Jets because it's Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is not even going to be a New York Jet next year. The Jets aren't playing for anything here. There isn't anything that they're playing for. Meanwhile, the Seahawks, as you mentioned, are for a tie at the top of their division with the Arizona Cardinals, and they need to continue to pile up wins. I think they're starting to find their little mojo here a little bit, and they cannot take what they did last week and go out to New York and lallygag and fumble the ball around against the New York Jets. New York has nothing going. Seattle has a lot on the line. Give me the Seahawks as 2-point favorites in this game. Finally, we talked about it. Houston got humbled at home last week. I just can't see a situation where Houston plays the game that they did last week against Tennessee and then goes out to Jacksonville, a team that's really close to calling the Ryder trucks to come pick up their stuff and play a bad game there. Now, granted, in most cases, I would say, hey, that humidity for teams coming into Jacksonville this time of year can be a thing. But it's humid in Houston also, although it gets a little cold. So we'll take that off the table. The Texans need to play a really good football game this week. Jacksonville has been all too willing to allow teams to play really good football games against them, and I think that will continue. This number is great for me, under a touchdown, so I'm going to run with it. I'll be shocked if Jaguars can get a victory here. I think it's all Houston. Give me the Texans.
So, my friends, on Thanksgiving Day, don't miss this. If you're listening to this, you're probably going to be listening tomorrow morning. The night game, Packers -3 over the Dolphins, right? Then you're grabbing Seattle +2 against the New York Jets. Why are the Jets? I mean,
is it +2? I said -2. I missed it.
-2. Let me look at my sheet here. Maybe you're right, because I'm gonna say I think you're right. It's -2. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Seattle's minus.
Yeah, they started off the Jets as favorites here,
Yes,
and then
I don't know.
Public made their adjustment.
Finally, he's got the Texans -4 over the Jags. So we gave you 6 winners there. So before we head out, we have to do head-to-head. And I'm humbled because I gave him a very hard time last week. I said, what are you doing with the Eagles going out to L.A.? L.A.'s hot. The Rams won 4-5. Listen, the Rams have all kinds of defensive problems that I didn't realize. Now, part of it was I think Barkley's playing the position on a different level this year. But the Rams are having problems stopping people. You warned me of that when you made the pick. You said, hey, I watched.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like I saw them against New England, and the final score was ugly, but it wasn't impressive.
No.
It definitely wasn't impressive.
It wasn't even ugly. It was 28-22. You warned me that, listen, they're having problems. And my whole retort was, well, the young quarterback from New England wasn't the quarterback. Listen, the Rams have defensive issues. So with that said, you get to pick our head-to-head this week.
I do. By the way, I want to touch on this. I'm a big Eric Dickerson fan, and Saquon Barkley is on pace to beat his single-season rushing record, albeit in 17 games. So in my mind, that would come with an asterisk, unless he breaks it in Game 16 this year. But he is on pace. And also, Derrick Henry is pretty close to being on pace to break that as well. So the running back is coming back in vogue. I think you mentioned it at the beginning of this show. All right, we're going with the Monday Night Football game again. Denver cost me a pick last week, and I'm looking at it, man. We talked about it, you and I, when we were doing our preseason show, and we did mention that Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix looked like two guys that were going to probably come out smelling the sweetest as the rookie quarterback class for a number of reasons. And Bo Nix right now, Emil, I would say, has kind of surpassed Jaden Daniels. He's looked really, really good out there. And Denver continues to play pretty good defense. Cleveland is coming to town off of, one for the ages last week. In a blizzard, they beat their bitter, in division rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So what happens is odds makers take the liberty of trying to throw a little cheese their way. I'm not buying it. I don't know that Cleveland could put together 2 games like that in a row. I don't see them going on the road into Mile High, gasping for air, and coming out and beating a Denver Broncos team that is rolling right along, Emil. This point spread should be 7. It's 5.5. Looks like value to me. I'm going to take the Broncos.
You know where you're missing here? A couple things.
Please, do tell.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you. First of all, throw out everything the Browns did at the beginning of the year with Deshaun Watson. Probably will go down as one of the 2 or 3 worst contracts in the history of the NFL. One thing you can't say about Jameis Winston, he's a competitor, plays hard, he's got tremendous arm talent. His big problem is decision making. He'll throw 50 balls in a game and 40 of them will look beautiful. The problem is 2 or 3 usually land in someone else's lap.
I see 5 of those this week.
I don't. I don't think the Broncos are really built to be blowing teams out. I mean, the Raiders helped them blow them out because they couldn't score from the 1-inch.
5.5 point favorites. Would 27-20 be a blowout?
You know what? I actually think they got to be careful here. Winston's trying to reestablish himself in the league. He's focused. I think this is one of these games where if the Broncos, the Browns had 10 days off, and there were probably 10 really good days. They feel good about themselves. Winning in the NFL is hard, even if you're a bad team. It tends to invigorate a team when they win a game like that, even if they're not playing for anything. I
got Jameis tossing one to my guy Pat Surtain to book it, folks. If you want to, do something on the side,
you might want to play Chad's little side bet there. Bet Surtain for an interception. But
I got him
Browns plus 5.5. That's what I'm saying. And wait, before you go, I don't know if you guys have these available. I lost my Survivor pick last week. I said use the Commanders. But if you're still in it and you have any of these 3 teams available, they're not losing outright. The Lions on Thursday are not losing to the Bears. The Chiefs cannot possibly lose to the Raiders after I've seen what the Raiders can do. And finally, if the Commanders find a way to lose at home off that loss to the Tennessee Titans,
they're toast.
So any of those 3 teams, you should be advancing if you're still in your pool.
All right, folks, you've got it all from us. The college football picks, the NFL picks, the head-to-head picks, the off-the-sheet picks. You've got the Survivor pick. You got all the picks that you need. Now go pick at some turkey and have yourself a good time this weekend, enjoying the football games, enjoying the family and the fun. We want to once again wish you guys happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving, and get some football and some turkey in you, will you? And bring back some winners. The ones that we dropped on there for you. And, of course, the 12-team parlay that you're going to put in for the week. All right. For Emil Calamino, I'm Chad Wilson. Thanks for watching and listening to. Oh, by the way, how could I leave without telling you guys, if you're going to drop some wagers this weekend, and we know that you are, you owe it to yourself to go check out our sponsor, Bovada Sportsbook. I'll have a link to it in the description down below, but it's one of the oldest and most solid run operations on the internet. Bovada Sportsbook, quick payouts, great lines, and they've got lines on everything. And yes, you can take a 3.5 line down to 3 at Bovada. So check them out. Think about opening an account because you just can't have too many. You got to get the best lines out there. If you're going to do this for real, do it for real. All right, so check out Bovada. Also subscribe to the show, however you're listening or taking this in. Give this one a like and a share. And we are out of here. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching and listening to the Two Chumps Podcast.